Good morning, guys. Today we'll be discussing about HMP shunt pathway. It's also called the HMP shunt basically stands for hexose monophosphate pathway or hexose monophosphate, pentose phosphate pathway or Warburg-Dickens pathway. You'll get all of these names in the exam. So whenever this name appears, it refers to the HMP shunt pathway. Now, this is an alternative pathway to TCA, Krebs cycle, and to glycolysis for glucose oxidation. So, if we are trying to perform glucose oxidation and trying to get a few particular compounds, specifically NADPH and ribose, pentoses, basically, if you want to get that, that is when HMP shunt pathway is performed in your body. That is one of the alternative pathways to glucose oxidation. The main objective of performing hexose monophosphate pathway will be getting NADPH. So hold on, let me write down. Main objective is um, NADPH and pentoses, specifically ribulose and all. Okay, etc. I'll just write etc. because you'll see in the cycle there'll be several more pentoses involved. These two are important. Why they are important? Now, pentoses, specifically ribose, ribulose, erythrose, all of them, sorry, not erythrose, ribose and ribulose, they are important in forming your RNA and DNA, right? They play an important role in forming nucleic acids for biosynthesis of nucleic acids, whereas NADPH is required for other reductive synthesis in your body, especially outside of mitochondria. If you're talking about NADPH specifically, it is required for reductive biosynthesis of fatty acids. I'll write down importance of NADPH once again. Importance of NADPH. Why do we need NADPH? So we are trying to take one glucose molecule and trying to oxidize it and get a few products from it. Those products will be NADPH and pentoses. That is why we are performing HMP shunt pathway, or that is why your body performs HMP shunt pathway. Now, NADPH is responsible for a few things. Okay, there are a few important things that is what you call NADPH involved in. One is um, it is required in biosynthesis of fatty acids and steroids. So this will play a very important role in function and formation of cholesterol as well, right? Fatty acids and steroids. Basically, steroids are something that comes from cholesterol. Fatty acid is something that will be involved in the formation of cholesterol. Both of them are important in ultimately forming hormones. If you do not have enough amount of fatty acids and steroids, you will not be able to have several hormones production. Right? Several hormones will not be produced in your body because they have a steroidal nucleus, and um, used in amino acid synthesis, especially glutamate. Right, it is required for that. Glutamate dehydrogenase requires NADPH synthesis, and it is important for detoxification or detoxifying function, detoxifying function of liver by assisting cytochrome P450 system. So, what is cytochrome P450 system? Now, in your liver, whenever you consume some product, it may be a food, it may be a drug, whatever you're consuming, there are a few metabolic enzymes that are present in your liver. Right, they'll help in breaking down that uh, product that you're eating. Especially in case of cytochrome P450, it is very very important in metabolizing a few drugs. Okay, CYP P450 system. You'll learn a little bit more about it in the next year when you come across pharmacology. But for now, just remember that CYP P450 system is involved in metabolism of a few drugs. Okay, if this system is not working properly, then your drugs will not be metabolized and you might have toxicity. NADPH helps in what do you call, making sure that CYP P450 system is running properly. That is what NADPH does in liver. That is one function. And the last important function is it helps in maintaining RBC membrane integrity and keeping ferrous ion, so that is Fe2 plus. I'll just write +2. You have to understand it is in superscript. All right, of hemoglobin in reduced form. Right, so it helps in all of these functions. That is the importance of NADPH. That is why we need NADPH, which is why you perform, or which is why your body performs HMP shunt pathway. All right, so these are some of the important uh, significance of hexose monophosphate pathway. One is obviously pentosis will be important for, if you're converting hexose into pentose, you'll be able to get or you'll be able to make what do you call, nucleic acids, RNA, DNA, and some nucleotides as well. So like ATP, NAD, FAD, coenzyme A, all of those are nucleotides which can be formed from pentoses, and from NADPH you can do all of these. NADPH also plays a role in phagocytosis, though it is not strongly correlated. It does play a role in phagocytosis in the sense that it will help phagocytosis, not that it will perform phagocytosis. I hope you know what is phagocytosis. Cell eating को बोलते हैं phagocytosis. What your macrophages do. Uh, and oxidative reactions, in both of them NADPH is involved. Now coming to the cycle itself of HMP shunt, I'll draw down the cycle so that you understand. So we start with glucose 6-phosphate. So we have glucose and we are converting it, we are phosphorylating it to glucose 6-phosphate. So let me put it here. Right. So your HMP shunt pathway is basically divided into two phases. Okay. One is the oxidative phase and the other is the non-oxidative phase. We'll discuss both of them. It is basically different chain of reactions. So the first reactions, I'll write the oxidative phase on the left and non-oxidative on the right, but it is a continuation. Okay, so this is oxidative phase, wherein you take one glucose 6-phosphate molecule and you oxidize it. 1 second. So you use the enzyme, I'll abbreviate glucose 6-phosphate as G6P, okay, so that we don't take too much of space. G6P dehydrogenase. Here you can enter. Okay, नहीं इधर ही लगाना ज़्यादा अच्छा रहता. Alright, so G6P dehydrogenase will be the enzyme that will dehydrogenate your glucose 6-phosphate, which will be taken up by your NAD plus, NADP plus. So what ends up happening is you take NADP plus and you reduce them. So you're oxidizing glucose 6-phosphate while reducing NADP plus, basically taking hydrogens out of them, and you form NADPH plus H plus, right? That is one molecule of NADPH that you get. Now, if you remember, the main one of the main functions of HMP shunt is to form NADPH. You'll see another one reaction like this, but what ends up happening is this happens in the presence of magnesium. So the cofactor magnesium G2 plus, yeah, or okay, different. It ends up forming, once you reduce glucose 6-phosphate, you get a product called 6-phosphogluconate. Right. So I'm taking glucose 6-phosphate, subjecting it to G6P, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, and what happens is hydrogens are lost to NADP plus, where the NADP plus is being reduced to NADPH and H plus. Now to this 6-phosphogluconate, hold on, for 6-phosphoglucolactonate, not gluconolactone. Sorry, right, 6-phosphogluconolactone. To this, I'll add one molecule of water, basically hydrolyzing the molecule in the presence of, one second, right. Basically, I'm hydrolyzing the enzymes, hydrolyzing 6-phosphogluconate in the presence of gluconolactone hydrolase, and I add one molecule of water here. So I take H2O and I add it here. Right, what ends up happening is you get 6-phosphogluconate from here. Gluconate. To this, I'll reduce this molecule of 6-phosphogluconate again using NADP plus, and I basically, what I do is, in the presence of a dehydrogenasing enzyme, and by using NADP plus again, I will reduce NADP or NADP plus into ADPH plus H plus. All right. So that is how you get this. Again, in the presence of magnesium, obviously. And during this process, what happens is, along with dehydrogenation, you will get another byproduct. So carbon dioxide is lost here. CO2. Carbon dioxide is lost here. We put it here like this. So 6-phosphogluconate, obviously 6 carbon molecule with 6 glucose molecule with the 6th vertical phosphate group. Here you are dehydrogenasing the molecule using NADP plus, and you get NADPH plus H plus. Basically, you are trying to reduce NADP plus and while oxidizing 6-gluconate, 6-phosphogluconate. Along with that, what happens is one carbon dioxide molecule is removed. So from a 6 carbon molecule, we started with a 6 carbon molecule here that was glucose 6-phosphate. If you're removing one carbon molecule, you'll end up with a molecule of 5 carbons, that is ribulose 5-phosphate. Right, if you remember, ribulose 5-phosphate is the ketonic form of a carbohydrate or a monosaccharide with 5 carbons. So this is what you get. This is the oxidative phase of your what do you call, HMP shunt pathway. Okay, I hope you understand. I'll just repeat it once again. In oxidative phase, you're basically taking glucose 6-phosphate. This glucose 6-phosphate you get from glucose. You add one phosphate molecule and you get glucose 6-phosphate. You dehydrogenase this molecule, wherein you're removing hydrogens, 2 molecule of hydrogens or 2 atoms of hydrogens, and you get NADPH plus H plus. You reduce NADP plus in the process. In doing so, you produce, or your body produces, 6-phosphogluconolactone, which is hydrolyzed. You add water to it to get 6-phosphogluconate, which is dehydrogenated again using NADP plus, and you remove 2 hydrogen molecules while removing a carbon dioxide molecule as well. So by doing so, you are basically removing one carbon from the 6 carbon structure, giving you a 5 carbon monosaccharide, which is ribulose 5-phosphate. Now this is the oxidative phase of your HMP shunt pathway. Coming to the non-oxidative phase, okay, please feel free to ask doubts if you are having any. Let me write non-oxidative phase. So yeah, line उतार देंगे इधर. It is basically the continuation. I'm just drawing it here. Let me draw it like this. So you get the same here. Okay. So I take ribulose 5-phosphate and I subject it to two different enzymes. So this is not a single molecule of ribulose 5-phosphate. Now in oxidative phase, I've taken one molecule of glucose 6-phosphate and I've gotten one molecule of ribulose 5-phosphate, right? I'll repeat oxidative phase twice. So I get two molecules of ribulose 5-phosphate. You'll understand why we need two here. So basically here we have two molecules of, uh, one second, just let me type two easier. Two molecules of ribulose 5-phosphate. Okay. Now these two molecules will be subjected to two different enzymes. So okay, the first enzyme will be, I'll just write R5P so that you have to understand it is ribulose 5-phosphate, because again space is the constraint. R5P epimerase. Epimerases are a type of isomerases. Isomerase is the enzyme that will isomerize a molecule, right? Epimerase is a special type of isomerase that will form epimers. You don't need to know too much about epimers. They basically it will be a different vertical position of phosphate. Okay, it will tinker around with the vertical position. If you have any doubt, if you have doubts about this, clear a little bit about isomerism or read a little bit about isomerism, you'll come across epimerism, though you don't need that much of detail anyway. So that is one enzyme it will be subjected to. The other enzyme will be ribose 5-phosphate. So it is not ribulose here. Ribose 5-phosphate ketoisomerase. So depending on the enzyme that is being acted upon your ribulose 5-phosphate, you will get two different molecules. Okay, R5P epimerase will give you xylulose 5-phosphate. So you end up with xylulose 5-phosphate. Number of carbons will not change, just their arrangement will change. All right, how they look, that will change. They both of them are still 5 carbon molecules. Here we are starting off with a 5 carbon molecule, which is ribulose. The same 5 carbon molecule will continue here. That is why we took two 5 carbon molecules, two molecules of ribulose 5-phosphate, which is giving one molecule of xylulose 5-phosphate and one molecule of ribose 5-phosphate. All right. So I hope you're understanding this step. I'm basically taking two molecules of 5 carbons and I'm changing each of them. I take for the first molecule of ribulose 5-phosphate and I subject it to, or your body subjects it to R5P epimerase, ribulose 5-phosphate epimerase, where you get xylulose 5-phosphate, and it will subject the other ribulose 5-phosphate molecule to ribose 5-phosphate ketoisomerase, wherein you get a ribose 5-phosphate molecule. All right. Now, to both of these, hmm, let me draw it this way. Okay, so what happens is I basically have two 5 carbon molecules, right? To this I subject trans-ketolase. Trans-ketolase will basically shift the number of carbons from one molecule to the other. What happens is this enzyme trans-ketolase will catalyze the transfer of carbon from xylulose 5-phosphate to ribose 5-phosphate. Basically, uh, 2 carbons will be given off. So what happens is you will get one molecule of pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate and one molecule of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Basically what I'm doing is I'm taking 5 carbon molecules. So I totally have a 10 carbon molecule, right? In the form of two 5 carbon molecules. I will uh, subject them to trans-ketolase, because of which what will happen is 2 carbons from ribose 5-phosphate. Think of it this way: 2 carbons from ribose 5-phosphate. Only carbons from ribose 5-phosphate are being given to xylulose 5-phosphate. So if I have 5, so I have, let's suppose I have a 5 molecule here, 5 carbon molecule here, and I have 5 carbon molecule here. I am subtracting 2 carbons from here and I'm adding 2 carbons here. So I will get a 7 carbon molecule here, which is pseudoheptulose, and I will get a 3 carbon molecule here, which is glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Okay, I hope you understood this step. If you're having any doubts, please feel free to ask me. I'll repeat once again. I'll take 2 molecules of ribulose 5-phosphate and I subject them to two different enzymes. One is ribulose 5-phosphate epimerase. This is ribulose, okay? This is ribose 5-phosphate ketoisomerase. I will get two different products. Both are 5 carbons initially, right? Xylulose 5-phosphate and ribose 5-phosphate. Now, to this, I will subject trans-ketolase. Trans-ketolase will basically remove 2 carbons from ribose 5-phosphate and it will donate it to xylulose 5-phosphate. Okay, here it is removing 2 carbons from here and attaching here. So here you will get a 7 carbon molecule, which is pseudoheptulose, and here you are left with 3 carbon molecule, which is glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Right? I hope you understood that. Arey Baba. Okay. Now to this molecule, I'll subject the enzyme. Again, a similar reaction will occur wherein, let me put it this way. I'll subject these both to something called transaldolase. Transaldolase is the enzyme, right? This will basically split the molecule again. Now I have one molecule of 7 carbons here and one molecule of 3 carbons here, right? So by what transaldolase will do is it will reduce 1 carbon from this, and it will basically not reduce 1 carbon, it will reduce 3 carbons from this, and it will add 3 carbons here. Okay, so transaldolase is removing 3 carbons from pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate and giving it to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. What ends up happening is you will get a 6 carbon molecule here and you will get a 4 carbon molecule. 7 minus 3 is 4 carbons, 3 plus 3 is 6 carbons. Okay, number of carbons totally remain the same. Still you have 10 carbons, right? You started off with 5 and 5. You're just moving the carbons from here to here. All right. So you're starting off with 5 and 5, then you go to 7 and 3, then you go to 4 and 6. In all of these conditions, you still have a 10 carbon molecule. Basically, two molecules in total with 10 carbons. What you end up with is fructose 6-phosphate let me draw it this way. You end up with fructose 6 phosphate, and here you have erythrose 4 phosphate. That is the reaction. Here you are getting a 4 carbon molecule, here you get a 6 carbon molecule. Now fructose 6 phosphate can actively go and participate in citric acid cycle. That is an alternative to glycolysis. That is how HMP shunt is linked to both glycolysis and TCA. So you are getting glucose 6 phosphate. You'll understand in a little bit later as well how erythrose, because the reaction is not done, erythrose 6 4 phosphate will again undergo a few reactions. So what happens is erythrose 4 phosphate is subjected to transketolase, wherein transketolase will basically remove one carbon molecule, and it will not just transfer the vertical phosphate molecule, but it will also remove one carbon molecule, wherein you end up getting glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate again. From glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, a reaction like gluconeogenesis will occur, wherein reversal of glycolysis occurs. So glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, when subjected to several enzymes, or basically let me write it this way, a reversal of glycolysis. Okay, so let us put it in a different color. Right, if you reverse glycolysis from glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, you end up getting glucose. So you'll have to repeat the whole reaction 2 times, even the oxidative phase, to get 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate to get glucose. All right, this fructose 6 phosphate can, you basically, instead of taking glucose, what will happen is the reversal of glycolysis will stop at fructose 6 phosphate rather than glucose. Let me put it this way, it can become glucose, but because this is relevant to TCA, citric acid cycle, fructose 6 phosphate पे ज़्यादा ही है. Right, this is your HMP shunt pathway. Okay, this will conclude your HMP shunt pathway. I hope you understood this. I'll explain the whole thing once again, just in case you did not understand or having doubts. We start off with the oxidative phase of the reaction, where you take one glucose 6 phosphate molecule. All right, here. Now this glucose 6 phosphate molecule is oxidized. The molecule is oxidized to get to basically reduce NADP plus. NADP plus is being reduced and glucose 6 phosphate is being oxidized, right? Basically you are removing 2 hydrogen moieties and you get 6 for 6 phosphoglucolactone. This is hydrolyzed using water and you get 6 phosphogluconate, wherein again it undergoes decarboxylation as well as oxidation, wherein you get a 5 carbon molecule here, which is ribulose 5 phosphate. Now from a 6 carbon molecule here you are getting a 5 carbon molecule. Now let me put this here in this way. What happens is this oxidative phase or the oxidative reaction occurs 2 times. So you end up with 2 molecules of ribulose 5 phosphate. Okay? This is the oxidative phase where you are oxidizing the molecule repeatedly. These 2 molecules of ribulose 5 phosphate will be subjected to 2 different enzymes. Now from here on out, non-oxidative phase has started. Okay, so let me clear this away. Okay, I'll need that shit. Okay, can't decrease the size of this. Oh, hello. Idhar aa gaya na. Right. Now you're taking 2 molecules of ribulose 5 phosphate and you're subjecting them to 2 different enzymes. One is an epimerase enzyme, the other is a ketoisomerase enzyme, giving you 2 5 carbon molecules, 2 different 5 carbon molecules. One is xylulose 5 phosphate and the other is ribose 5 phosphate. you subject both of these to transketolase. Transketolase will basically change the number of carbons in between them. Now you have a 5 carbon molecule here and you have another 5 carbon molecule here. What happens is from here 2 carbons are reduced and they are donated to this fellow. So what happens is 5 plus 2 will become a 7 carbon molecule, which is pseudoheptylose 7 phosphate, and you will be left with glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, which is a 3 carbon molecule. This is again subjected to an enzyme called transaldolase, which will remove 3 carbons from pseudoheptylose 7 phosphate here, and it will donate it to glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, giving you a 6 carbon structure and a 4 carbon structure. This will enter TCA. Okay, citric acid cycle, that is one byproduct of TCA. From here, erythrose 4 phosphate, what happens is it is subject to transketolase where one carbon dioxide is also removed. Okay, basically it loses one carbon and you get a 3 carbon molecule, which is glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. Now till here you are ending up with one 3 carbon molecule, right? The whole of the reaction will occur again. Okay, all the way from oxidative phase to this point up to where erythrose 4 phosphate is found, so that you can get another 3 carbon molecule. Basically, instead of what do you call, taking the reaction again, imagine two reactions that are occurring simultaneously, and the end product of two different HMP shunt pathways. See, one reaction is occurring like this, let's suppose the other one is occurring parallelly like this. So both of them will give one molecule of G3P, right? That will basically cause reversal of glycolysis and you end up with a fructose 6 phosphate molecule, which is a 6 carbon molecule. This again will enter TCA, citric acid cycle. Okay, I hope you understood what is HMP shunt pathway. This is HMP shunt. If you have any doubts, please let me know right now. The main focus of HMP shunt is to get these NADP plus and ribose and ribulose 5 carbon molecules. If and when required, the reaction will stop here and it will go to form DNA and RNA if required, or else the reaction will continue like that. All right, if you have no doubts, tomorrow we'll do TCA then. Okay, please make sure you practice these cycles, not just for one day. If you keep all of these cycles, because cycles will be the most important in all of these, metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins and fats, cycles will be the most important ones. Please make sure that you practice it every day. You can at least practice one of these cycles, because if you keep it in the end, you will get confused, especially in the enzymes and the intermediate products, what is coming in, what is going out, all of that, because it involves a lot of memorization. There's not a lot to understand in this, because you do not have structures. It will become a little bit harder for you because you only have to memorize names. Structure rahata, you can play around, add a few hydrogen compounds and all of that, and you can change the structure, but you do not have structures, you only have names. So you need to practice a little bit more, right? Chalo.